Brian Moran, founder of Government CIO. Welcome to Government CIO Magazine.
Hi, my name is Michelle Shoker with Government CIO Magazine, and today we will be speaking with Ann Dunkin, the Chief Information Officer at the Environmental Protection Agency.
I think the reason the portal is an important part of my legacy at EPA is that it exemplifies the change we're trying to make in the agency in terms of the way we deliver IT services. So it's about changing the way we do development and changing the user experience. And so moving towards modern practices, the e-enterprise portal was one of our first two projects that took us to modern practices. So the portal is modular, it's cloud native, and it's using open source tools and open development practices and agile practices. So looking at that product, it's a great example of what we're doing. In addition, it also serves to truly change the model of environmental protection. The way we work with the states, the tribes, and the regulated community is fundamentally changed by the business process change behind the portal. So the portal itself is a manifestation of those changing business processes, and it's also our ability to reduce the total cost of software development. So we see implementation of valuable practices, a change in our business practices with the states and tribes, and also a real change in the way that, in the cost of doing business. So the Lotus Notes migration has been a long-term process. It started with migrating the email from Lotus Notes to Microsoft Office 365. And that process, EPA was one of the first adopters of Office 365 in the government. And they did the agency did this process very fast. And so there were a lot of challenges along the way in learning how this was going to work for the agency and dealing with issues such as using the trusted internet connection the government has, things like that. So there were a lot of challenges in just getting up and running on the email system, getting reliable service. And then once that happened, there's been adoption of the tools in place. So the adoption of SharePoint, adoption of the new Outlook tools, and also OneDrive. So moving through that process has been one set of challenges. But the other challenge is we now had 22,000 Lotus Notes applications in addition to the email. And of those 22,000 applications, we had to look at those 22,000 and understand which of those applications we need to keep, which need to be migrated, and then which need to be archived or deleted or saved on litigation hold for the future. And so we went through that and just found that there were about 2,000 applications up front that looked like they need to be migrated. And then we did a second look at those applications and discovered that, in fact, there was maybe a much smaller fraction that truly were applications. Many were simply databases or file stores, things like that, basically the equivalent of a simple Excel sheet. So things that didn't need to be transferred as applications. Once we've identified the things that truly are applications, we're trying to reduce duplication. So we want to reduce the number of applications we move because it's important for the agency to reduce that. So, for example, we have 30-plus fleet management solutions in Lotus Notes. We want to end up with one fleet management solution when we're done. So that's a great example of how we want to work across the agency. We had multiple emergency contact databases. We want to end up with one emergency contact tool. It might be that every part of the agency has their own actual copy of that database and tool, but we want to make sure that there's one tool. We're not doing development over and over again. So that process of figuring out how to reduce the number of applications and where to put them on standardized platforms or commercial off-the-shelf software instead of building customized capabilities in, say, Java, for example. That's another challenge. So really getting standardized, working across the entire agency to get people to cooperate on that standardization, and reducing our overall footprint has been a huge challenge for us. So yeah, EPA has taken a different approach to developing digital services teams than USDS and 18F did. So USDS started with a solution that said, we're going to come and fix things for you. So we're going to put out the fire for you. And then 18F said, well, we'll come in and build a building for you, right? We'll do this work for you. And what we said is we wanted to give our folks the capabilities to build their own buildings, to do their own work. So as you point out, we started embedding digital services staff across the agency. So rather than us having a team of, say, firefighters that came in and fixed that problem for them or even built that capability for them, what we did was we said, we're going to get that particular piece of expertise you need, whether it's a UX designer, a product owner, a developer, an agile coach, whatever you need, and then we're going to help you to do your implementation with those resources. So you'll do your own product, you'll manage your product process, your development process, and we'll simply provide you with the tools and resources. So we're providing them those resources like staff through our EPA fellowship program. And then we're also providing them access to acquisition vehicles that make it easier to acquire development teams, because most teams use outsourced development groups. So those capabilities are what we're providing, and the partnership there has been great. We have a backlog of people across the agency who really want to work with us, who want the opportunity to do agile development and have our support in making that work. So agile lean implementation really ended up being a cultural change across the whole agency. So starting with lean was adopted by the agency even before I got here as a practice that the agency wanted to follow. So it's been an expectation that when you work on a business process or before you even do any sort of development, you will lean that business process. And the goal is to lean business processes across the agency and then to share those lean business processes among organizations. So if one region leans a business process and that works great, then what we want to see is other agencies use that same business process as it's leaned. And that's a huge cultural change for the agency. Generally speaking, people have done their own thing and their own business process and not looked for those commonalities. So the agency is really trying to change this business process. And Agile is a great fit working with Lean, because you really do want to do that leaning before you ever start your Agile development process, or any development process for that matter. But Agile really lends itself towards that activity and that lean process. So what we've seen is across the agency we're getting reinforcement of that whole process. So we have a design thinking group that we've put in place in the administrator's office that's helping people with their process design as they go through lean processing and also as they develop new applications and tools. We have procurement support for Agile procurement. We have HR support for Agile hiring. So all across the agency, as you go to do things, you keep finding yourself being sort of pushed back towards using Agile and Lean. And that really is helping us create the culture change we need, because you can't do this work without changing the culture of the agency. You can't change the processes without changing the way people think about their work, or they're simply going to do what we often call Agile fall, which is simply to pretend you're doing Agile but really do waterfall development and then do really short releases. So we really want people to embrace the idea that we're going to experiment, to embrace the idea that we're going to release very quickly, and embrace the idea that we care about user feedback, not stakeholder feedback, not the person in the back office, but the actual end user. So I think that data should be public because it's the public's data, right? The government is here as a servant of the public, and unless that data involves either confidential business information, personally identifiable information, or national security information, that should be shared. And it should be shared because it's valuable data that people can use to further scientific research and that the public can use to understand the situation they live in. So we have multiple types of data in our organization. We have data that helps the public, like the TRI data and the EnviroFacts data. And that data should allow people to understand the environment they live in and the risks they face in their environment and the challenges. And so we want to make that data as accessible as possible to people in a format that they can understand. So it's not helpful to me if I tell you there's 1 part per billion of benzene in the atmosphere, if you don't understand what that means, right? I wouldn't understand what that means. So we need to tell people your air is healthy, your air is unhealthy. The water in your neighborhood is healthy or it's unhealthy. So we need to be able to provide data in a format that makes sense to people. So that's the data for the public. But we have a great deal of scientific data we generate, and we want to be able to make that available to scientists outside the agency, either in other agencies in the government or in the public, in universities and the private sector. And so that data we need to make available in a very different way, because we need to be able to give people access to raw data that has good, solid metadata so that they can understand the data they're using and that's accessible in useful formats via APIs. And so we've really focused on releasing data. We've got a tremendous amount of data available to the public that way as well. And we're also trying to make the data inside the agency more available to researchers across the agency, and also the ability to share that data back with our state and tribal partners so that we can all be better informed. So I think the most important message for citizens working to protect the environment is that everyone can make a difference. Right? We have ways for people to engage with us from an IT standpoint, from a data standpoint. Right now we're actually in the middle of a challenge. So the Smart Cities Challenge, which is going to allow people in major cities to apply for a grant from the EPA that will provide seed money for sensors in cities. So that's one example of how the public can get involved, is to work with their municipality to apply for that grant. There are grants all over the agency and all over the private sector, all over the public sector. Various agencies have grants that allow people to engage. There's great opportunities coming forward for people to gather data about their own environment through inexpensive sensors. And obviously, a little bit outside my realm of expertise, there are lots of advocacy and volunteer opportunities out there. So I think that what people can do is only limited by their imagination and their desire to help.